Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show. I so do appreciate you being here. Subscribe to the channel while you're here. This is the only podcast where the claws come out in defense of liberty, truth, and the First Amendment. I'm your host, Conservative Cat, and I'm going to be armed with the Bible in one hand and armed with the Constitution in the other hand. Today, we are going to be digging our claws into a jaw-dropping congressional hearing where an Illinois Democrat, yes, another Illinois Democrat, a Soros-adjacent apologist. Okay, Soros-adjacent apologist. It seems like he's apologizing for or defending George Soros, really. We're going to get to this because an Illinois congressman is defending really censorship and George Soros-backed fact checkers. So we're going to get to that. Critics are saying, of course, this was a war on free speech under the Joe Biden administration. Donald Trump is now doing away with that at the Department of Defense. So we'll get to that. Plus, Illinois is paying top dollar for construction, but yet Illinois ranks at the very bottom, not very bottom, it's third worst in the nation for new houses. We can't build a house to save our life here in the state of Illinois. So we're going to get to that. Plus, a judge, you guys are really going to want to stick around for this one because this is one of those shocking stories. I find these weird things on the internet on X usually. But this judge ordered this progressive city, and throw in the comment section what progressive city you think this is. A judge ordered a progressive city to do something about the park where people are publicly fornicating. They are nude. They are doing open air drug deals. So we're going to get to that this morning as well. All right, let's dig into it. Let's talk about the Illinois Congressman Eric Sorensen. I'm going to say that he's a George Soros apologist. It seems like he's defending George Soros here by adjacently because he's defending these fact checkers who are funded by George Soros. So he defended the Department of Defense teaming up with what I would call left-wing fact checkers. I don't know about you, but George Soros isn't exactly a neutral bipartisan guy. Okay, he's a leftist. And what do these fact checkers do? They silence you. So the Department of Defense, under the Biden administration, they were working with people like the Poynter Institute and other various fact checkers. And they were working with the fact checkers to really try to figure out if you were a domestic terrorist for going to your school board meeting, for talking about ivermectin on Facebook, for watching the Christian Broadcasting Network. And we're going to get into it because what's been uncovered here is truly shocking. And I can't believe that this happened under the Biden administration and they got away with it. Let's be clear. This wasn't about fact checking. This was about narrative enforcement. They wanted to enforce a particular narrative, Joe Biden, that ivermectin didn't work, that masking was effective, and that vaccination was effective against the spread of COVID-19, that, the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian misinformation, censorship. Okay, it was about narrative enforcement. It was about censorship, and it was really about the slow suffocation of dissent in the freest country on earth, which is America. They wanted to suffocate dissent and opposition. So let's break it down. State representative, a U.S. representative, he's a congressman, Eric Sorensen, weatherman, who also happens to be gay, and he's from Rockford, took to the microphone during a House Armed Services Committee hearing. Okay, took to the microphone, and he slammed this proposed amendment that would stop the Department of Defense from partnering with fact checkers who are, wait for it, bankrolled by George Soros a lot of the time, or other left-wing donors. Okay, so these fact checkers are bankrolled by those types of people. And he says, oh, they're independent fact checkers. They're not independent fact checkers. They are bankrolled by leftist billionaires a lot of times, a lot of left-wing organizations. So here's what Sorensen said. You don't earn the trust of people by seeking fame or wanting to go viral, or certainly not by being a jerk on cable TV. So I don't know exactly what he's talking about here. It sounds like he's going after alternative media, which happens to be mainly on social media, like platforms like this one. We're an alternative media source. We're not bankrolled by billionaires or corporations. And one thing, I got my journalism degree from Illinois State University, and one thing that they didn't tell you was that a lot of these journalists are all funded by the same 5 companies. Okay, so if you go into the journalism field, most likely you're going to be a part of one of these 5 companies. So these 5 companies own all of these like affiliates. So ABC, I think that's Disney, owns a lot of these local TV or local media outlets. Okay, so they don't tell you that. And I mean, this was him in the committee hearing, and I'll just play the whole clip for you so you guys know what went down. And then we'll come back because he took some stabs at places like Fox News, Newsmax. Now they are, corporate as well. Okay, so this doesn't. It's clear that Soros took shots at Fox News and Newsmax because they're 2 of the only remaining outlets not under leftist corporate control. So there's a lot of leftist corporate control. There is one corporation, that's Fox News, and I believe Newsmax is tied to that corporation, but I'd have to check into that. But they're not leftist corporations. There's like 5 leftist corporations, and that pretty much funds all of the media across the nation. So he took stabs at Fox News and Newsmax. Take a listen. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge my colleagues to oppose Dr. McCormick's amendment that seeks to limit any DOD engagement with fact-checking agencies. This is a matter of responsible journalism. Before my election to this Congress, I spent 22 years in local broadcast journalism. You don't earn the trust of the people by seeking fame or wanting to go viral, or certainly not by being a jerk on cable TV. Earning the trust of the people comes from repeated and due diligence of investigating data and information, creating a conduit of communication, making sure that what we do is based in fact and anchored in strong ethics. But if you're stuck watching Fox News or Newsmax all day, you've never seen an independent fact checker. Why? Because what they're giving you is not the news. It's conjecture, it's opinion, it's propaganda, with the sole purpose of fear-mongering and driving a right-wing political agenda. And in my life, as Mr. DeLuzio had said, I'm also not afraid of fact checkers. But I have also been careful to make sure that what I speak is accurate. But I'm also willing to admit when my mistakes do occur. So I ask, why are my colleagues across the aisle so afraid of this accountability? Speaking truth is not Republican. Speaking truth is not Democrat. In this day and age of rumor and myth spreading on the internet like the world's biggest wildfire, we must hold ourselves to the highest standards. Let's make sure our nation is never led astray. I strongly oppose this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will do the same. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that's Eric Sorensen. And I want to make sure that I give you all of the facts here with the 5 conglomerates. There's 5 conglomerates that people pretty much agree on. That's Comcast, Walt Disney, Paramount, Warner Bros., Discovery, and News Corp. Okay, so there's like 5 major conglomerates. Okay, now Fox News, these are tied mainly to family. So Rupert Murdoch, he's the Fox News guy, and then Newsmax, you've got, it was founded by Christopher Rudy. So these are organizations, or they are corporations. Like Fox News is a corporation, but they're founded by people, and they're not like these major conglomerates. So Fox News and Newsmax slightly differ from media outlets that are in this 5 conglomerate family, if that makes sense. It's very complicated, but they're better, right? Fox News, it's slightly better because they're not part of this 5 conglomerates who are bankrolled a lot of the times by leftist billionaires. So let me translate this for you, what Eric Sorensen said. And I'm just going to translate what he had said. We don't like people who are allowed to question us. That's what I think he said there. Now, let's be honest, folks, this isn't about facts. It's about silencing conservatives, Christian voices, people who are pro-Second Amendment, people who dare step outside of the government-approved narrative. That's what this is about. So then enter in Dan Schneider. He's the vice president of Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. He's quoted in the Center Square. He pulled no punches. According to Snyder, he said that this is part of the Joe Biden 57 censorship initiatives. So I dug into this 57 censorship initiatives. This actually happened under the Biden administration. This was just one part where his administration through the DOD ramped up speech suppression in ways that I've never even thought were possible here in the United States. This is the freest country on earth. And Snyder said this, quote, "Never before in our nation's history have we ever seen this kind of attack on First Amendment free speech rights." He's right. And what really bothers me about all of this is that this is the Department of Defense we're talking about, the Pentagon. They should be defending us from China, Russia, terrorism. But they, under the Biden administration, were preoccupied with Americans. They were wanting to protect Americans from Americans for simply being American, for simply being Christian, patriots, or being somebody who questioned the regime or showed up at a school board meeting and questioned the curriculum. Okay, so they're not defending the homeland. They're defending a narrative. That's what the Biden administration was doing. And these so-called fact checkers, I want to talk about the Poynter Institute, because this is like just common knowledge at this point that the DOD was associated with the Poynter Institute, who was the, crown jewel of leftist fact checking, the Poynter Institute. And that's heavily funded by George Soros and the Open Societies Foundation. So Poynter masquerades as a neutral source and as an independent fact checker, but it's bankrolled by a guy who's clearly a leftist, George Soros, and they are out there, the Poynter Institute, we're in partnership and in collaboration with the Department of Defense. They're out there labeling conservatives or conservative opinion as misinformation or purveyors of misinformation. So Dan Snyder didn't hold back. He said, quote, "The Poynter Institute is Soros-funded entity. Is a Soros-funded entity. It is by design to specifically attack right of center opposition to liberal government." Fact check, true. So this organization and many other organizations aren't out there to inform. They're out there to enforce. So the government, in partnership with Poynter and other friends, labels your speech dangerous, and then they shut it down. They label it misinformation, and they shut it down. So essentially what we saw under the Biden administration, I would call the Chinese model. Propaganda, shutting down free speech. It's just done with better branding because we're using people of academic excellence, the Poynter Institute, and you're using people with these big fancy degrees to, label everything misinformation. And it's just branded better. It's just not outright like Xi Jinping coming out and saying, no, you can't say that, or you go to jail, or his face on a billboard saying, vote for me, right? Paid for by the Chinese people. It's not overt like that because these people are just branding it a little bit better. So let's follow the money. There was a FOIA investigation done that found that the Department of Homeland Security actually handed out $40 million. So it wasn't just the Department of Defense. This is the Department of Homeland Security. Alejandro Mayorkas at the time, under the Biden administration, they handed out $40 million in grants to fact checkers. Now, one of the recipients of these grants, you got to know this, University of Dayton, this is in Ohio. So the University of Dayton created what's called, they didn't create it. They, in collaboration with the Department of Homeland Security, they created a pyramid of far right radicalization. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever seen this pyramid before, but it's shocking stuff. They put the National Rifle Association, the Republican National Committee, okay, so just Republicans in general, in this pyramid. Okay, so they had a pyramid of radicalization, and then they put the Christian Broadcasting Network on a rung of this pyramid. Think about that. They're calling Christians and just Republicans in general radicals. Okay, the Christian Broadcasting Network, if you are aware of it, all they do is like preach the gospel, and they're calling them radicals. Like, the government did this with your tax dollars. So the government cut the University of Dayton $350,000 to do this little pyramid thing, and your tax dollars are essentially paying for Ivy League elites to smear Christian Americans as extremists. That was Joe Biden's America. So back to Sorensen. Here's what he said during the hearing: we have to hold ourselves to a high standard. That's rich, coming from this guy, because really what he's doing here is defending censorship and demonizing Christian media. This is Christian Broadcasting Network. That's what they were doing through the Department of Defense, through the Department of Homeland Security, through these government agencies. They were working in collaboration with these fact checkers like the University of Dayton and like the Poynter Institute. Let's hold him to higher standards. Let's ask why our military, this is the Department of Defense, is using Soros-approved speech police to silence Americans instead of addressing global threats. Because I don't know about you, but under Biden, the Department of Defense, they really screwed up a lot. The Chinese spy balloon, Russia, Ukraine. They totally missed the attack, October 7th attack. They missed Hamas. They were so laser focused on grandma's memes on Facebook. Okay. That in Decatur, you got grandma in Decatur, and she's posting things about ivermectin on her social media or posting memes. And they were more concerned about labeling her a domestic terrorist than, I don't know, the actual terrorist who carried out the October 7th terrorist attack. The Chinese spy balloon traveling across to America. Then we've got Russia invading Ukraine. I mean, they missed all of that because they were so focused on censoring you. So it's not because you're dangerous, it's because you're uncontrollable. Okay. And your values don't align with DC. That is why they have to label you an extremist or a radical, because your faith, your family, your firearms, your freedom is your last line of defense. So where does the church fall in all of this? I like to bring it into a biblical perspective for you, because that is the basic instructions before leaving Earth. All of what I talk about in the news can be explained by what's in the Bible. I mean, the Bible can explain what's going on. So when Christian speech is labeled domestic extremism, okay, and they did that. Like, this is not even an argument. I just laid out for you the University of Dayton. They had this radicalization pyramid, and they put the Christian Broadcasting Network on it. Go check out the Christian Broadcasting Network. All they do all day is preach the gospel. That's it. So when Christian speech is labeled domestic extremism, we're seeing the groundwork of persecution being laid out, laid out brick by brick. Okay, and we're not talking about hypothetical danger here. Once they start labeling you a domestic threat, Christians will then be persecuted, because that's what history shows us. So Fox News, CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network, a lot of Fox News, they have a lot of Christian type features on there. So the pyramid says that they're dangerous. Your tax dollars funded this pyramid for them to come up with this pyramid. And Christ warned us that this would happen in the Bible. John 15:18. If the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. So what do? Well, we don't stop speaking the truth loudly and with love, but without compromise. Okay, sorry, Eric Sorensen. You're right. We should hold ourselves to a high standard. That standard is the Bible. And we don't persecute Christians. That's looked down upon in the Bible. And we don't label them domestic extremists with taxpayer dollars. Okay, so we don't bow down to people like George Soros, who are anti-humanists. We don't bow down to DC. We bow down to God alone. And here's the truth, friends. Eric Sorensen saying that Fox News is propaganda. And then you've got Dan Snyder, a patriot, who's saying that, hey, the Pentagon is partnering with people who censor. And George Soros, mind you, is behind the scenes funding the whole entire thing, right? The fact checking. You can't fight propaganda with more propaganda. What you need is to fight it with truth, with light, and with sound biblical scripture. And really, I mean, just the fact that they labeled Christians as extremists should tell you all you really need to know about these fact checkers. So that's all you really need. Okay, so let Sorensen, and I love how in that clip he said, oh, I was a local broadcaster. Dude, you were a weatherman. And I know you just read on the teleprompter. I know that weathermen, they typically just read off a teleprompter. And while you're reading off your teleprompter, dude, we will be reading scripture, and we will not let our Pentagon, let the Department of Defense bow down to leftist billionaires like George Soros and work with leftist billionaire organizations like the Poynter Institute. We will bow down to Christ and Christ alone in this country. And I do need to chat about a little something else this morning. I'm going to take a quick break. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. Hit that like button right now. Crucial legislation, 1099s being discussed today. Yes, before the Help Committee. I will have to look into that. I will include that in the show tomorrow. I'm very excited. I hope it turns out well. So the leftists, Kamala Harris, had she had become president, by the way, she would have done away with 1099. Like, I'm telling you, a sweeping ban on 1099 employees. So these are contract workers, people who don't necessarily have a boss, right? And they do contract work, 1099 employees. Now, for some odd reason, Illinois, Chicago specifically, and Illinois has, been talking about this because the Uber drivers are 1099. And now they want to unionize, and it's just a mess. And it's just like, wait a second. If you don't like the setup, then just go drive for somebody else. If you don't like what Uber is doing as far as your 1099 deal, then don't be a 1099 employee. But now what they're trying to do is get it to where 1099 employees can unionize like together. And I think that is the most bizarre thing in the world. The Chicago Uber drivers. I have a show. You guys can go check it out. It's archived where we discussed this. But the left, what they don't like is your freedom. Okay, so that's what this is really all about with the 1099 workers. They don't like that you get to work on your own schedule. They don't like that, that it's entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur, and it's not for everybody. Okay, 1099 work is not for everybody, but typically it's people who are more entrepreneurial, and they don't like that, so they want to shut it down because they can't control it. So we'll probably talk about that tomorrow. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back talking a little bit about how Illinois can't build houses despite us paying an arm and a leg to these labor unions, or despite us paying the highest top dollar for construction. Okay, so they have very, very high salaries, but yet we can't build a house to save our life. I'll be right back. Welcome to Conservative Cat Clips, where the claws come out and the truth lands hard. I'm your host, Cat. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something that ought to make every Illinois taxpayer's blood boil. You're funding the abortion industry, and the abortion industry is very, very funded by the state of Illinois. So we're going to be zooming in on Illinois. What used to be the land of Lincoln is now the Midwest's abortion sanctuary. Under Governor J.B. Pritzker, Illinois has gone full throttle into becoming what he proudly calls the beacon for reproductive rights. Translation, come one, come all. Have your abortions here, and the taxpayers are going to pick up the tab. In 2019, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the so-called Reproductive Health Act, making abortion, quote, a fundamental right in Illinois. But that wasn't all. He also repealed the Parental Notification Act for minors getting abortions. So that means little Susie, if she's 12 years old, she doesn't need her parents' permission to go get an abortion. Your 13-year-old daughter can get an abortion in Illinois, even without you knowing. And while Illinois families are struggling with inflation, property taxes, and rising crime, guess where your tax dollars are going? The last few years, just tens of millions of dollars of Illinois taxpayer dollars have gone to Planned Parenthood in just a few years, tens of millions of dollars. And they're not going to just fund the procedure itself. They're paying for out-of-state women to come here and abort their babies. It includes transportation, lodging costs, and logistical support, whatever the hell that means. I'm probably paying for some woman to get a McDonald's sandwich while she's here in the state. And literally, we're running a state-sponsored abortion tourism business. That's what we're doing here in the state. And let's not forget Planned Parenthood CEO salaries. Over $670,000 for Alexis McGill Johnson. Regional directors, they make about like six figures too. So your paycheck is shrinking, their paycheck is growing, and your roads have potholes, but Planned Parenthood thriving. Pritzker loves to pose as a champion for women, but let's be honest, this isn't even about ideology. It's about power and money. He's not protecting women. He's protecting Planned Parenthood's bottom line and all of these people raking in that CEO cash. And Illinois is now the abortion capital of the Midwest because he made it that way. Governor J.B. Pritzker. Illinois used to be about opportunity and family values. Now it's the go-to state for late-term abortion. Over 46,000 abortions in Illinois were done in 2022 or 2023 alone. 46,000 in Illinois alone, and many of you paid for that. And under Governor J.B. Pritzker, that number is just going to keep going up and up and up every single year. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, reminding you that taxpayer-funded abortion is not compassionate. It's corruption. And all of these people are making tons of money. And it's time we demand real leadership. It's time we step up and demand that they stop funding this madness. It's time we stand for life here in the state of Illinois. What do you think? Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Be sure to subscribe and head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com. Support the show by buying your bottle of pre-workout today. Patriot Pump Energy, it's clean energy. There's black pepper extract in it, and you can definitely stay focused all day long. When you just take a little scoop of it, throw it in your water, shake it up. It's good. It's good for you. It's good stuff. So welcome to the Conservative Cat Show. We don't need a permit to expose corruption, and we're not going to wait for union approval to tell you the truth. So we are digging deep into one of the strangest paradoxes in modern America. I would say this is a strange little paradox. Illinois pays its construction workers top dollar, and yet we're building almost nothing. So some would say that that's a mystery and what's going on. If we're paying our construction workers very well, better than most other states, so definitely our neighboring states, we're paying our construction workers very, very well. But for some odd reason, they're not building anything. So some would say it's a mystery. I call it government. It's not much of a mystery to me. I know what's going on here. It's government. Because in Illinois, it's a place where you pay more and you get less. Look at our school system, right? You pay more in property taxes every single flipping year, and you get less. The kids don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. They don't know how to do math at grade level. So then they turn around and then they blame the free market for it, or they blame homeschooling or private schools or anything like that. So they turn around and blame the free market and dirty capitalism. How dirty capitalism is the reason why we need rent control, right? They'll say that. Today we're going to be talking about construction wages. the housing supply, union influence, and the regulatory jungle that has turned Illinois into a state of stagnation when it comes to housing. We'll look at Chicago, Springfield, and what's happening as far as our surrounding neighbors go, Wisconsin, Kentucky, who seem to be building far more with far less. Okay, so there's obviously something wrong in Illinois. We should be building way more than them, especially considering we've got the highest paid construction workers, some of the highest paid construction workers in the nation. We'll also look at a biblical through a biblical lens, because if we're going to rebuild anything, or if we're going to build anything spiritually, economically, we've got to be working from God's blueprint, which is the Bible. So we're going to take a look at this through a biblical lens. So grab your coffee, grab a measuring tape, and let's go. Grab your tape measure and let's dig into it. So first things first are the numbers. Nationwide, construction workers earn a median wage of about $58,000 per year. That's decent. Blue collar, soul of the earth. But Illinois construction workers, they're earning way more than that. Now, the median hovers around 60,000, but it depends on the trade. Depending on the trade, it goes even higher than that. So in theory, that should be a good thing. So we pay our construction workers more. If you're a construction worker in, say, Indiana, and you can move over to Illinois and make a ton of money, why wouldn't you do that? High wages, strong middle class, skilled trades, getting their dues, right? And getting their rightful salary. And you think that it's all great in theory, sure, but that's in theory. In reality, Illinois ranks 48 out of 50 in new housing construction. So we built just 3.7 new homes per 100 existing homes last year. So let me translate that to you. We are paying top dollar for a building boom that isn't happening. We're supposed to be paying this top dollar because they're going to be, working harder. They're going to be, working more efficient with the more money. The work is going to be done. Okay, so it's like we're paying for a 5-star meal and we're just getting like government cheese. Things that just stinky government cheese. We're paying for a 5-course meal and we're not getting it. We're just getting the government stink. So let's unpack this little contradiction that we've run into here in the state of Illinois. On one hand, we have good, strong pay for construction workers, and I am all for that. Okay, I am totally for the guy swinging the hammer in the rain, doing the jackhammer. Okay, my brother works in residential construction. He's not a part of a union, which is why I know a little thing or two about this. It's because we have phased out small builders, people who aren't a part of unions, and only the politically connected and the unions get the contract work, and you've completely eliminated a good chunk of the people who can build houses. Okay, so I'll get to that here in just a second, but we have dismal housing development, really, really bad. Okay, so it's good that the construction workers are getting paid, but we have bad housing development. That's what's going on. So you're probably wondering, okay, what the hell is going on here then? At some point, it is labor costs. To some point, high wages, they say, mean more expensive projects. And the more expensive the project is, it's harder to get up off the ground. So because the wages are so high, that might explain why we're not building anything. It's because it's an expensive cost. And then once you go to build houses, or like this housing project, and then you get the lumber and everything, and you're like, oh man, this is like pretty expensive, and we've got to pay these guys this much. We're not going to have enough to complete the project, which might explain why a lot of housing projects, particularly I know the Bloomington Normal area, a lot of these multifamily housing project areas, these duplexes, they don't go up after years after they've been approved. It's because labor costs could be potentially very high. We're paying these construction workers very, very well. And there is truth to that, it's too expensive to keep the workers on and pay them this rate, because then, you turn around and you find out that lumber is actually going to cost this much and you don't have enough to actually get the project done. So the project stagnates. But that's just one tool in the toolbox here. Okay, that's just one factor, because I think that there is actually a much bigger factor, a much bigger problem. The rusty wrench jamming up the whole machine, I think, is the overregulation of the housing market. That's what I think is jamming up the whole machine here. And in Illinois, it's not enough to have good workers. You also need to get through zoning laws written during the Carter administration. You need to navigate the maze of environmental reviews, okay? Comply with prevailing wage laws. Join a union if you want to bid on most public work. So bridges and things like that. They won't award you the work if you aren't a union. Okay, so you have to join a union if you want to build things. So you've already eliminated a good chunk of your construction workers who would be willing to do the job and probably be willing to do the job for much less. Because a lot of these times, these union guys, they demand pretty high wages and the cost is going to be pretty expensive. So like I said, that's a problem that's just one tool in the toolbox, where you've got this really high cost labor, and then you go down the road and the project winds up being pretty expensive. And you're like, we can't pay the guys handle, so do the project. So the project stays stuck. We wouldn't run into that problem a whole lot if we weren't so hell-bent on hiring unions for public work. So you might be wondering, damn, why is that bridge taking forever? It's because it was awarded to a union, awarded to a construction company that is a union, and they have to pay their guys quite a bit, and they don't have enough money for the project, so it's stagnant until they can get enough money to continue the project. So if you're building in a liberal-run city, particularly Chicago, you can't forget that there's diversity and equity impact reports that you have to do. So there's a lot of red tape here. So I'm going through bullet point by bullet point here. Zoning laws. You got to get through, the zoning laws written during the Carter administration. You got to navigate the maze of environmental issues and environmental reviews. You have to comply with prevailing wage laws. You have to join a union. Or you have to be a union in order to get the work to begin with. Okay, so you can't just be free market. You've got to be a union in order to be awarded the public work anyway. So we've built a system. Here's what this is all about. We've built a system that discourages productivity and rewards political compliance. That's what we've done. And I want to talk about the union grip on Illinois. Because according to Construction Coverage Report, 26.1% of private construction workers in Illinois belong to a union. That's the third highest in the nation. So let me be clear, this isn't about demonizing the trades. I respect people who wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and swing hammers in the rain. Honest pay for honest work. It's a biblical principle. And I'm not entirely against unions, but I do want to make something clear. I actually saw this the other day. Hang on, let me pull this up. And I was like, yeah, this pretty much sums up everything about unions. Henry Ford. So Henry Ford was the guy who actually created weekends, 8-hour workday, living wage, 5-day, 40-hour work week. Henry Ford did that to attract better workers to his automobile plant. So capitalism, competition, creates higher wages and better working conditions. It's not necessarily the unions. If we were to just let capitalism do its thing, the bad companies would trickle out and the good companies would stay, and there would be higher wages and competitive pay. But we don't do that here in the state of Illinois. There is a very tight grip. The union grip on Illinois is pretty intense. So like I said, 26.1% of the private construction workers in Illinois belong to a union. That's the third highest in the nation. To be clear, this isn't about demonizing the trades. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for those people. But what we're looking at here are union bosses who are acting like political kingmakers, okay? And they are demanding project labor agreements that block non-union workers. And they're padding the pockets of politicians like Governor J.B. Pritzker's and his list of people in Springfield. And we've got a problem, okay, because you've blocked out all the non-union workers. So you've eliminated a lot of who can do work, specifically public work, like bridges and things. They always hire unions, right? Illinois does. And then they turn around and then they pad the pockets of these politicians who then, of course, will always reward or award them the contracts. So union membership isn't just high in Illinois, it's weaponized. It's the gatekeeper. If you're not in the club, you're not going to get the contract. Okay, good luck getting a contract. You're not going to get it likely. So good luck bidding. Good luck growing your small business. You know, if there's like a small bridge in your county that you want to, you know, bid on that project and the government awards you that project, that could really take your business to the next level, right? If the government pays you a large sum to build this bridge, it could take your business to the next level. You could really grow it, but that would never happen if you aren't a union. Okay, if you're a non-worker or non-union worker, if you have non-union workers, you're never going to be awarded contracts. So it's no wonder the housing market is frozen, because only the big players, often the politically connected ones, can ever afford to build, because they also have to comply. Remember, construction workers have to comply with this whole host of, you know, diversity and equity impact reports. You know, you have to make sure you have gender neutral porta potties on site, right? You have to comply with prevailing wage. You have to submit your environmental review. If you're building in a liberal city, you have to submit your diversity report. Okay. So only the biggest players and the politically connected players, they can afford to build. And even then, it's hard for the politically connected to even build, because there's so much over-regulation and red tape, even for the politically connected. And because the union, you have to pay so much to your construction workers, highest in the nation when it comes to paying our construction workers, by the way. Your union, you know, they negotiate a contract. You have to pay your construction worker a median average or a median wage of $60,000. A lot of times it's even higher than that for government contracts. I think it's closer to like 80,000 that these, you know, these workers are paid, or like, you know, it's an insane amount of money that these people are paid when they're doing government work. And I'm not against it, because this is really important work. Swinging a hammer at 5 a.m., very important. But sometimes the project gets way too expensive when you have to pay those union guys that much money. And then things happen in the project, the construction project, and then you don't have enough money to complete the project, which is why the bridge that's been out for a couple of years and you got the orange cones around it, that's why it's been taking so long. Okay, so let's look across state lines now. Same weather, same economy, different outcomes, okay? So we've got Wisconsin. The median construction wage is 66,000. So that's closer to Illinois' construction wage. But they ranked 9th in the nation for wages. Okay, they ranked 9th in the nation for wages, and they're building. Okay, they're building a lot in Wisconsin compared to Illinois, and they're paying their workers about the same as what we're paying our workers. Okay, so but they're actually building. We ranked 48th. Okay, when it came to building houses in the nation, 48th. That's like the third worst. They're actually building. Indiana, $65,868 is their median construction wage. They're ranked 11th in building. And Missouri, $65,387, ranked 13th in building. Iowa, $65,249, They're ranked 14th in building. Okay, like I said, we're ranked 48th in building, and we're paying a higher than these folks in some cases. Now, even Kentucky, they ranked 32 in building, which isn't great. It's still way better than us. We're 48, by the way, but they're paying significantly less. So they're paying $56,000 for their construction, and that's their median average or their median wage. Why? Because their labor market is freer. Their permitting process is lighter. Unions have less political control in these neighboring states like Missouri, Iowa, Indiana, Wisconsin. They have less political control, and the government gets out of the way and the workers get to work. Okay. And they don't dictate who gets what project. Okay. And what politically connected construction company gets what project. So let's zoom out to these two disaster zones, Springfield and Chicago. In Springfield, the state capital, housing construction is virtually non-existent. Just 2 housing units per 1,000 existing homes last year. That puts us at, in Springfield, 199th among all small metros in the country. So ranked towards the bottom, Springfield, obviously. And then, so even our state lawmakers, bureaucrats, and media elites who are living there in Springfield, it's a dead zone for housing. It's completely dead there. So you would think that they would try to fix this. Okay, cut the permitting process or make it easier. Cut the regulation. Make it easier for non-worker or non-union worker construction companies to bid on projects. Open up the playing field a little bit more. But these people who are making the rules are choking their own backyard. Like they're choking their own backyard death here. Okay, so they're screwing themselves over. They've got no housing in Springfield. It was 2 new housing units per every 1,000 of existing homes last year. So now let's take a look at Chicago, city with skyscrapers, billion-dollar budgets, and Chicago metro area. They authorized just 4.6. It's a little better than Springfield per 1,000 homes in 2024. Last year. That makes them the 9th worst in the country for large metro areas. So this is a city that once built the Sears Tower in under 3 years. Okay. Now you can't even get like duplexes up in 5 years. Like this is how far we've come in the state of Illinois because of the overregulation and because of the selective process that we use when awarding contracts. So property taxes are through the roof, crime is out of control, and families are leaving fast. Okay, and you've got all that going on here in the state of Illinois as well. It's a warning to the rest of us. If you don't protect freedom, the builders stop building. We have to protect freedom. That's what it all boils down to. We can't treat union companies different than non-union companies. We should be treating them the same. And I want to take a step back and look at this through a biblical lens, because this is not just economic mismanagement. It's a spiritual disorder that we've got going on here. The Bible is full of metaphors about building. Jesus talked about the man who built his house on the rock versus the man who built his house on the sand. That's Matthew 7, 24 through 27. God commands us to prepare the field before building the house. Proverbs 24, 27. Nehemiah had to battle political interference while building the walls of Jerusalem. Okay, so Illinois is building on sand, regulation, corruption, cronyism, and pride. And the winds are blowing and the structure is collapsing. That's what's going on here in Illinois. And we want to restore communities. We're going to have to restore our foundations. Truth over the narrative, freedom over control, stewardship over waste, and God's law over man's pride. That's what we're going to have to start doing here, because we're just going to have to start using the non-union construction companies for government work, public work a lot of the times, and awarding those guys the contracts as well. We're going to have to stop enabling these unions to demand things, crazy things that are very hard to comply with. So these construction companies have to stop mid-project because they don't have enough money to pay their workers because we pay them so well, because the construction worker pays them so well, or company pays the worker so well. We're going to have to really prioritize freedom and free market, because that's not what we have right now. And we're going to have to stop with the environmental reviews and the zoning laws and things like that. So here's where we land. Illinois construction workers are among the best paid in the country, and they're being hamstrung by the political class that treats building like a threat. Okay, so they're paid the best, but you've got this political class in Springfield that treats building like it's a threat, and they have all kinds of red tape. And we're not lacking labor, we're lacking liberty. That's what's going on here. So that's where we land. And if you want to see our state rise again, we have to cut the red tape, break the political stranglehold, reintroduce competition, accountability, and common sense. This is just common sense. We just eliminated a lot of the work for our non-union workers or non-union construction companies. We don't award them contracts, rarely, I'm sure, because they're not politically connected a lot of the time. Because you get the union dues, the construction dues, then you can take those union dues and donate them to the various politicians who will in turn award them the contracts. And we need to do away with that whole system. And I'm not against unions entirely, but we have to remember that the only way that we're really going to get the 40-hour work week, look at what Henry Ford did. He had a company, and it wasn't a union who created it. It was Henry Ford who created a livable wage, the 40-hour work week, weekends, things like that, because he wanted to attract good workers, and he wanted to keep his workers on. So most importantly, we need to remember what we're building for, because it's not just homes, but we're building for families, not just subdivisions, but we're building futures, and not just cities, but we're building a state really worth saving. And these construction workers should be more focused on that than getting their billion-dollar contracts. They should be focused on, hey, why are we building these homes? We are building them for families, and their reason for doing it should be totally changed. The people in charge of these construction companies shouldn't just be looking at dollar signs. They should be looking at, hey, we're building for our future here. We're building subdivisions for the future generation. We're building homes for these families. For some reason, I don't know why we can't grasp that, hey, we need to make it more free. And if we make it more free and prioritize freedom, then we're going to have more housing. Okay, the overregulation, giving all of this power to unions to negotiate things in their contracts, like pet bereavement days, like a month of pet bereavement, or these crazy exorbitant salaries. It just makes it impossible to do the work. So I got to take a quick break, but we're going to be back, and I'm going to be talking about this progressive city. Throw it in the comments section if you know what one. There's a progressive city that's been told, hey, you can't let this neighbor or this park be a place where people can publicly fornicate and be nude. A judge had ordered this progressive city to do something about the park. So we're going to get to that story here. I think it's going to be really interesting. So smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'll be right back.
You ever tried to explain your faith to someone who doesn't get it? Like you're speaking a different language? Peter knew that tension. He told believers to live such good lives among the pagans that even if they accused them of doing wrong, they'd see their lives and end up glorifying God. Translation: let your life preach louder than your lips. It's not weakness. That's warfare. You don't always need a microphone. You need integrity. You need consistency. You need to grind with grit and grace when no one's cheering. People are watching how you handle stress, how you treat your wife, how you react when life sucker punches you. They're watching to see if your God is real, because your walk is the evidence. You don't get to control what they say, but you can live in a way that shuts lies down over time. Let your honesty wreck stereotypes. Let your discipline echo louder than their gossip. Let your kindness feel like a gut punch to a world used to selfish men. Because one day, maybe not now, maybe not soon, those same people who laughed at your faith might remember your life when they hit rock bottom. And when they do, they'll know who to call. Live like someone's eternity might depend on it, because it might. You want a pre-workout that speaks for itself? Patriot Pump doesn't need hype, just results. Clean energy, no crash, built for men who lead by example, on the platform or in the shadows. Fuels what matters. Train for legacy.
Hey, good morning. I appreciate you being here. Smash that like button and share this out with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. We are going to be talking a little bit about this progressive city. Throw it in the comments section. Let's see if you guys guessed. My guess, Austin, Texas. Yeah, that is a really good guess. For some odd reason, despite it being a red state, Austin, Texas, they've got this weird obsession with drag queen story hour and like drag queens. I don't know. There's like this really toxic organization, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's got like a stronghold there in Austin, Texas. This is actually Seattle. So a judge, this bombshell of an order came down. And I don't know why, but the left believes that it's compassionate to allow degenerate individuals to engage in debauchery in public. I have no idea why the left believes that's compassionate. And despite that really harming and affecting and impacting the rest of the population. Okay, so you've got a few individuals who are engaging in debauchery, and that impacts the rest of the population. And it's just not fair. But for some odd reason, their compassion lies with those who are committing crimes and engaging in degeneracy. Although the majority of law-abiding citizens, right, they're not engaging in that type of behavior, and they would rather take the side of the people who are engaging in that type of behavior. If you could explain it for me, that'd be great. Throw it in the comment section. Why is the left taking the side of the people who are committing crimes, engaging in this degeneracy? And it's only a small amount of people in this park. I mean, it's enough. A majority of the people in Seattle, they're not doing that. But yet the government takes the side of people who are very, very small in comparison to the rest of the population, but are also engaging in nastiness. So this public park, it's a place for families. Okay, this is a public park. It's a place for children. Seattle still thought that, being that they're more morally superior, that it should be a hub for public sex and masturbation and indecent exposure and lewd conduct. So the people who run Seattle think that this isn't a public park for, the majority of the population, for children and for families to attend, but rather it should be a park for the people who want to commit these lewd sex acts. So just because the city officials turned an eye to this disgusting debauchery and this deranged behavior, that doesn't mean that they're legally or morally in the right, which is why this judge, Interstage Left, came in and had to step in because the city has failed to meet the bare minimum requirements of upholding law and order, which is just to enforce things like public nudity. So the judge has mandated that Seattle temporarily shut down Denny Blaine Park. This is where we're at today, Denny Blaine Park, unless the city presents a plan within the next 2 weeks to tackle what the court has deemed a public nuisance. So they say that this is a public nuisance. The court, the judge, citing continued illegal activities such as public sex and indecent exposure. So according to the Post Millennial, the ruling issued, what day was that issued? I think it was Monday. The ruling was issued, and it comes after a neighborhood group called Denny Blaine Park for All. They filed a lawsuit earlier this year accusing the city of allowing a waterfront park, so this is right on the water, to become a regional venue for criminal and uncivil behavior. The group claims that the park has been overtaken by lewd conduct, drug use, harassment, and it's creating an unsafe environment for nearby families and park goers. Seattle City Attorney Ann Davison had previously urged the court not to shut down the park, arguing that the criminal behavior in the park, such as the public sex and the drug use, it should be addressed. So she did acknowledge that it should be addressed. The criminal behavior should be addressed, like the public sex and the drug use. But she argued that the park shouldn't be shut down because those things are being addressed, but the nudity should not be considered a nuisance. So let me break this down for you. The city attorney came out and argued that while the criminal behavior should be addressed and is being addressed, that the park shouldn't be shut down just if people are nude. Davidson defended the park's identity as a queer nude space with social utility. And I'm quoting her here, according to court filings. Why would the city attorney argue that nudity alone isn't considered? I mean, this is public nudity. Well, this is a nuisance. What do you mean? She's arguing that it shouldn't be considered a nuisance. Why is this something that the city is so strangely compassionate about? And why is it so important to have a public park effectively dedicated to this kind of behavior, to being nude? Why have a public park that's dedicated to this type of behavior, and why defend it? It's so bizarre. So it's deranged. Absolutely not what local government should be doing or should ever support. Let's take a listen to this. Here we go.
Now, you've been talking to these neighbors. It's so gross. It's so disgusting. I can't believe, again, like so many things, I can't believe this is even an issue. But what happened in just the last week?
Well, just yesterday, there were two guys who were there who were nude. And they clearly, I think, were trying to troll folks because they got exceptionally graphic with some of the dancing that they were doing, including grinding while nude and having fun and laughing. Meanwhile, you've got a community of folks who've got kids who are feeling terrorized right now by this particular encampment of nudists. Now, despite what some of the people are telling you, this has nothing to do with the nudity. Nudity, simple nudity at least, in Washington and in Seattle in particular, is legal. They can't sue to stop that. What they can do is sue to stop the indecent liberties that have been going on, including, to your point, just a lot of self-care, I suppose,
Self-love.
that's just out in the open and being self-love. And it's out in the open. It's got no respect for the community. And some of the individuals who've been doing it are accused of being really aggressive towards the women who are living there, including two teenage girls who had to witness this. It's too much.
Wow. So there you have it, folks. What? Libs are trying to destroy America. Exactly. I couldn't have summed it up better than this. This political, I don't know what this is. I think it's just a political pursuit to make nudity not taboo. I mean, public nudity not taboo. It should be as far as I know, like public nudity is illegal, and I don't know. So this is just bizarre that you've got a city attorney out there now saying it shouldn't be considered a nuisance for people to go out there and be publicly nude. Now, when you start having open air drug deals and nude people who are there to, express themselves or to have self-love, you are inviting a recipe for disaster. Like, it shouldn't shock you when you allow that. And this just goes to show you, when you allow this, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Now they're being sexually violent or violent towards young women in the park. Just so sad, so weird. All right, now I want to talk about Canada and how they want to become India. And they are trying to ensure that no human is illegal. Our northern neighbors have truly lost their minds, Canada. And this Canadian resident, this is where we're going today, was given a conditional discharge. Okay, so he got a conditional discharge after he had tried to have sex with someone who was a minor, who he believed was a minor. So, however, given the fact that he wanted to become a citizen, the judge believes that it's the morally permissible thing to do here is to let him off the hook and to give him a conditional discharge, because the more evil thing would be to disrupt his immigration hearing and actually convict him of his crimes. So let's go to Canada here. This Indian man in Canada tried paying for sex with a 15-year-old. Okay, and he got a conditional discharge simply because he's an immigrant and he's trying to get citizenship status there in Canada, and simply because he's an immigrant, and the conviction would have delayed his citizenship. So that's why the judge didn't convict, and the judge just gave him this conditional discharge. So this is utter insanity. Canada is a complete joke. Our neighbors to the north, they're a complete joke, and they are obviously trying to ensure that they become India. According to Justice Paul Thomas O'Mara, he was treating this 30-year-old I'm going to butcher this name, but he's a pedo, so it doesn't really matter. Akamishmar Kant. Okay. So he's treating this 30-year-old immigrant like a Canadian citizen. Or he said that treating this guy like a Canadian citizen is unfair because a conviction would unfairly impact his life. So here's what the judge said. Mr. Kant is a permanent resident seeking Canadian citizenship and professional licensing. A conviction would not only delay his citizenship for 4 years, but it would also prevent him from sponsoring his wife and obtaining his engineering license. These immigration and professional consequences are far more severe than those faced by an offender with in a similar previous case who was a Canadian citizen with no such vulnerabilities. What? So the courts have recognized that such consequences can justify a more lenient sentence, including a discharge. A conviction would lead to several collateral consequences, such as jeopardizing his immigration status, delaying his citizenship, and preventing him from sponsoring his wife, which would likely result in their separation. These consequences would be disproportionate to the offense and would undermine his rehabilitative progress. This is what the judge is saying. So I don't know why the judge wants to protect predators in his country so badly. That's up for you to decide and to discuss amongst yourselves. But what the hell? According to the National Review, in December of 2023, Kant, he's 30-something years old, 30 years old, and he made the mistake of arranging with a 15-year-old at a Holiday Inn for $140. He arranged to have sex with the 15-year-old for $140, okay? Only when he got there did he realize that the 14-year-old turned out to be, or the 15-year-old, turned out to be a cop. And he was arrested in the hotel. And guess what he had on him? $140 cash on hand. And subsequently, he ended up in court. But he wouldn't receive a criminal record for his actions because of his immigration status. On June 25th, Kant was sentenced to a conditional discharge for committing an indecent act. For 3 months, he will be under house arrest. During that time, he can go shopping for a few hours every Sunday. He can go to religious services. He can go to medical appointments. He can travel to and from work. So pretty much like his entire life isn't disrupted. Okay, so 12 months of probation will follow afterward. Whether Ontario will appeal remains in question, remains an open question, as the Providence won't reveal its plan until July 25th, what they're going to do with this guy. So if they're going to appeal. So had he already been a Canadian citizen, his punishment would have been much worse. I want to be clear about that. So why such a low sentence? Part of it came down to him pleading to a lesser offense. The Peel police told the Post that they initially charged Kant with obtaining sexual services for consideration from a person under 18 years old. This would have carried a 6-month minimum jail sentence for first-time offenders under the criminal code, but Ontario Court of Appeal ruled this modest mandatory minimum to be unconstitutional last year. So he pleaded to attempting an indecent act instead, which carries a maximum penalty of 2 years in jail. Crown prosecutors asked for 90 days, but they didn't get their wish. And much of the reason why they didn't get his 90 days, so he maximum could have served 2 years. Prosecutors asked for just 90 days, but the prosecutors didn't even get that. The judge came back and pretty much came up with this BS reason and said that, well, because he's an immigrant, the consequences will be super severe, so we're going to be lenient on his sentencing here. And I mean, what? So it should have been even worse, okay, had he been like a citizen, and without the whole like mandatory, like they had said that mandatory minimums were unconstitutional. But he pled this down. He was supposed to get an even higher charge, but then he pled it down, but then it got before the judge, and then they just did a conditional discharge, although the prosecution asked for 90 days. Oh, man. I mean, taking all into account, this judge concluded, and I'm going to quote from the judge here really quick, a conviction would lead to severe collateral consequences, such as jeopardizing his immigration status, delaying his citizenship, and preventing him from sponsoring his wife, which would lead to their separation. I don't know why the wife would want to stay with him to begin with. He tried to have sex with a 15-year-old. He's 30. Okay. There you have it, folks. I mean, the judge doesn't care if this guy tried to abuse a child. That was far irrelevant when it came to his immigration status, according to him. So rather than uphold the law and appeal on the side and really rule on the side of morality and what's right, he decided to do the logical thing, which was to continue with his commitment to ensure that no immigrant is in Canada is illegal. So that's what he decided to do. He wanted to do the logical thing, which is to ensure that no immigrant is illegal, and that this guy can get citizenship and sponsor his wife's citizenship and all of that. I don't know how to tell you anything more about this story other than that it's insane, it's immoral, it's unfathomable that this is how insane things have gotten for our neighbors in the north. Nonetheless, it always seems like the most vulnerable people, and I've said this multiple times, seems like the most vulnerable people in our society are the ones who are subjected to the most, or to the evils of this progressive social experiment. Okay, so the progressive social experiment of no human is illegal, open borders, we have to make sure nobody has an immigration status, or you can't talk about anybody's immigration status. This social experiment that the left is doing and that the progressives are doing always winds up hurting like vulnerable people, like 15-year-old girls, or like the Lake and Rileys. And if, for example, another progressive social experiment is this transing the kids, right? Obviously, the most vulnerable people of our society, they're affected by that. The children are affected by that. So this is deeply deranged. This ruling by this judge, it's a slap in the face, justice everywhere. The guy tried to have sex with a 15-year-old girl and wanted to pay the girl for sex, and arranged it all at a hotel room, and he got off simply because he's an illegal immigrant. Okay, so I got to take a quick break, but we are going to be coming back to Joy Reid. Joy Reid, she's out there calling half the country, the people who voted for Donald Trump, she's saying that they're part of a cult, and She said that this cult is letting their daughters die and families be destroyed, and they're drowning themselves in Texas by supporting President Donald Trump. I mean, that's essentially what she said. She's really gone off a rocker here since her not having this MSNBC show. She's really said some crazy things. I don't know how people say that what happened in Texas is President Donald Trump's fault. This is not President Donald Trump's fault. It's a natural disaster that happened. And the National Weather Service wasn't defunded. The cuts that have been proposed, I've done this show multiple times, are to NOAA. It's cutting NOAA by 27% and increasing the National Weather Service under his 2026 budget plan 6.7%. So the National Weather Service, all that is for operations, boots on the ground, people who are there 2 a.m., Doppler radar, looking at this, issuing the alerts. We want to reorganize, right? Because right now the people at NOAA are researching, how weather affects gay people more than it does straight people. And we need to get rid of those people who are researching that kind of stuff because it's not helping anybody. It's not an effective way of using our tax dollars. So I guess she's like blaming Donald Trump for the flood in Texas. I don't know. I'll let you decipher it when we come back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I'll be right back. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, the place where we claw through the globalist garbage and we land on the truth. I'm your host, Kat, and today we are putting a spotlight on the topic the elites don't want to really talk about it all. That is the great American tech scam, and it is known as H-1B visa abuse. Now, let's get one thing straight. The H-1B visas, they were never meant to replace Americans. They were designed to fill critical skill gaps. The rare, highly skilled jobs, highly specialized jobs in the U.S. that no U.S. citizen was able to fulfill, and they weren't qualified to do so. So surprise, surprise, big tech twisted the law into a legal loophole, and now they're using it to import cheap foreign labor and kick the American worker to the curb. Okay, so if you want the receipts, I'll talk the numbers if you want to. You want to talk numbers? The U.S. government issues 85,000 H-1B visas every year, and nearly 70% of them come from India, workers from India. And they're mostly in IT and software jobs. And here's the kicker. Most of them aren't PhDs. They're not geniuses. No. They're mid-level coders and tech support, and they're doing jobs that qualified Americans are getting laid off from. Companies like Infosys, Tata, foreign outsourcing companies, they have become H-1B recipients, okay? Farming out workers to places like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and they're pushing out the United States citizen who demands fair pay. The United States citizens, I'm not doing slave labor. These companies like Infosys, they're foreign outsourcing giants, okay? And they've become top H-1B recipients, farming workers out to places. So they're the companies that get the workers, and then they give them to Google, Amazon, and Facebook. In fact, in a recent case, it shows this. Disney was training their own H-1B replacements before laying off the American workers. Yes, this is a recent case. That's not innovation, that's exploitation. So the American worker was quite literally training their worker, like their replacement. And Infosys and Tata, these foreign outsourcing giants, they supply these companies like Google, Amazon, and Facebook with the cheap labor. It's kind of like human trafficking, if you ask me. Like legal human trafficking, the state-sanctioned human trafficking. And guess what? These visas are renewable for up to 6 years. So they lead to green cards, which means these jobs aren't temporary at all. So they're not just temporarily doing cheap labor here. They are quite literally being outsourced, these American workers. Don't even get me started on the wages. H-1B workers are often paid 20% or 40% less, anywhere between 20 to 40% less than the American counterpart. Why? Because these companies aren't hiring for skill. They're hiring for savings. That's what it is. And the real victims here are the American class, middle class, the American worker, especially in STEM. They went to college, they want these jobs, and now they lose everything. They took out all these loans and they lose their job, and now they're told, sorry, we got to give your job to someone cheaper from overseas, and we're going to call it diversity. That's what they're doing in these big tech jobs, Google, Facebook, Amazon. And where's the government? Half asleep and bought off, because these H-1B abusers, they have got armies of lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they are pushing this to increase the cap every year of how many H-1B visa workers can be awarded their visas. So I said it was 85,000 a year. Well, they've got these lobbyists like your Infosys, your your giants, your H-1B visas, these foreign outsourcing company giants. They're down in Washington, D.C., and they are lobbying, and they are pushing to increase this cap from 85,000 every year to more and more and more. And they're claiming there's a worker shortage. No, honey, there's a wage shortage. There's a big difference. This is Cat signing off, conservative Cat clips. Here's the truth. Hiring foreign labor at the expense of the American worker is an innovation. It's betrayal, it's treason, and it's business. It's betrayal in a business suit. That's what it is. It's just a straight up and it's time to cap the scam. It's time to get rid of the scam, put American talent first, and this country needs to stop outsourcing its own people. It's been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, good morning. This is Conservative Cat. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to get to some of your comments here. Perversion is perversion. These freaks need to go to jail and be prosecuted. We need to protect the kids. Public nudity, public sex should be illegal, and it should stay that way. Exactly. So let me ask you this, Angela. I appreciate you being here. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Let me ask you this. What does compassion look like without the truth? So in Seattle, the city thought that they were being compassionate by turning a blind eye to what they call a queer nude space. Okay, they think that they're being compassionate by allowing these queer people to be nude in the public park. And let's be honest, it's not just nudity. Okay, there was public sex, there was masturbation going on. They'll say that this stuff isn't going on, but there is drug use and harassment going on, and that's all happening in a park meant for children and families. The Bible speaks directly to this moral blindness. Okay, in Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. So they think that they're being compassionate by allowing these queer people to be nude in this space. Those who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Okay, woe to those. And that's exactly what's happening here. The city officials defending this lewd behavior in the name of social utility, that this is a social utility and that the queers need this space to be nude publicly. Meanwhile, you've got the law-abiding citizens, the mothers, the fathers, the children who are forced to abandon the park altogether because they don't want to subject their kids, obviously, to this lewd behavior, the public nudity. That's exactly what's going on here. The good is that there's families and that there's children there. Those are the good people. And they're calling them the crazy ones for not wanting to go to the park and for abandoning the park and raising a fuss about this via lawsuit. So the people they've entrusted with enforcing the law have become apologists for depravity. But thank God for truth and for justice. A judge stepped in and ordered the city to shut down the park unless they clean it up. Why? Because even the secular law still recognizes God's word and how it was declared in the beginning that sin defiles a land. Okay, this is ultimately, whether the judge knows it or not, the secular law, which I would say a lot of our laws aren't, they weren't originally. So look at Leviticus. It's really interesting and fascinating, even right down to what you're supposed to do with your pets if they bite somebody. Animal control is called, and a lot of the times you might have to put down the dog. That's called for in Leviticus. So a lot of our laws here in America come from the Bible. And despite him maybe not knowing that or viewing the law from a secular perspective, the judge, I don't know this judge, but at the end of the day, the law was based on this premise that sin defiles the land. And Ephesians 5:11 commands have nothing to do with fruitless seeds of darkness, but rather expose them. And that's exactly what these righteous citizens did. Through this lawsuit, they stood up, they exposed the darkness, and they demanded accountability. And remember this, true compassion does not enable sin. I don't know why we've blurred the lines here. One, Christians aren't called to be, super empathetic. Like, we're called to tell the truth, and we're called to tell people about Jesus. And true compassion, if you want to be empathetic and show compassion, you're definitely not supposed to enable sin. True love tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, because Jesus didn't die so that way we could be free to sin in this park, in this Denny Blaine Park in Seattle. He died to set us free from sin, and he called us into holiness. Okay, so that's my take on the Seattle thing. That's the biblical segment for you on that. But I do want to get to Joy Reid. Like I said, Joy Reid is out there, and she's calling half the country part of a cult. And she said that they would put the president's happiness over their own. And she said that this cult would let their daughters and their families be destroyed and drown themselves in Texas for the president's happiness. It's truly bizarre. I think she's gone off the deep end here because she's off MSNBC now. And there's no evidence to back up such statements. Okay. You'd have to believe that the Texas floods were Donald Trump's fault directly, which they weren't. There were no cuts to National Weather Service. National Weather Service issued totally fine alerts. It's just that this was particularly bad. Now, I've heard whispers that it's potentially a terrorist attack. And I don't know if there's any truth to that. And I haven't heard much about that, so I don't want to speak on it. But from what I can understand so far, the evidence that I've looked at, that this is a tragic natural disaster that happened, and you can't put that on President Donald Trump. So there is no evidence to back up her claims and her statements here that there is a cult and they're following President Donald Trump and they're putting his happiness over themselves, and that they would rather let their daughters die or be destroyed or have them drown in Texas. Let's take a listen to Joy Reid. Here we go.
Trump has those kind of voters. They are dedicated to him personally. They care more about him being happy than them being happy. They care more about him having what he wants than them having what they want. They will give up their health care. They will let their daughters be destroyed. They will let their families be destroyed. There's nothing he can do. He can drown them in Texas. He can take away their FEMA. He can do anything he wants to them. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a cult. Trump has those kind of voters. They are dedicated to him personally.
Okay. It's unclear if she's truly insane or if she's just making things up and she hopes that the masses are too naive to think for themselves. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm not a cult follower. I'm not a part of a cult. I like President Donald Trump. For the most part, there's things that, and I'm really nervous about the whole Epstein thing. I really wish he would, bring them out. And I have had a position on this where I think that he's trying to prevent global economic collapse. I think that there's a lot of big names on that list. And if they were to be taken out of boardrooms, the CEOs of the banking class, I think that it would lead to economic collapse. So I'm not happy with President Trump. I would love to, if the releasing the Epstein files results in global economic collapse, perhaps we have to go into global economic collapse, which is, a big deal. And I don't know what I would do if I was in his shoes. I really think that that's what's going on. But for President Donald Trump to come out and really name call people who want to see the Epstein files released. So this proves that I'm not in a cult. I don't like everything that President Donald Trump has done. There were aspects of the big, beautiful bill that I didn't necessarily love. He is not the most pro 2A president. Neither was Ronald Reagan. But this proves that I'm not in a cult. I would vote for President Donald Trump again, even with the Epstein thing. I'd vote for him again and again and again. I think that he's a great president. But it's like, I'm not going to, you know, support him no matter what. You know what I mean? I'd have to see something worth abandoning my support for President Donald Trump over, you know, and like, what else were we going to have? Kamala Harris? Like, come on now. But I think that she's just coming out and saying these things because she wants the masses to believe that Trump supporters are, you know, cult followers or whatever. And I think she's really lost her mind since losing her MSNBC show. And you've got to be pretty unhinged to go off the rails like that and say that they're cult followers and they will follow him despite him drowning the people in Texas, which is just outlandish. Like, you can't claim that half the country is part of some sort of invisible cult and that they would do so, or that they would drown themselves in support, or like drown themselves and continue to support President Donald Trump solely because you disagree with them politically. Like, she's labeling half the country as this cult and that they'd be willing to drown themselves over not supporting President Donald Trump. And really the only reason why she's doing that is because she disagrees with Trump supporters politically. And I expect nothing less, though. This is Joy Reid we're talking about. Reid decided to claim that Trump voters would rather destroy their daughters than piss off the president. I'm assuming she's talking about abortion there. Destroy their daughters, you know, give up women's rights, a woman's right to kill somebody. You know, and really President Donald Trump hasn't touched abortion during his second term here. It was he just says that, hey, it's the SCOTUS decision, okay, and that's that. It's up to the states. So he's not even all that far on abortion. I don't particularly like what he did with IVF either. IVF is being abused, and we need check marks on that, and we need to make sure that we're not killing babies, making babies just to kill them. You know, but I see where Donald Trump is coming from. We're living in a time where it's very hard to procreate because of all the poisons in our food, because we've told women to wait longer and longer and longer. So I understand it to a degree, the IVF. I, in general, don't like IVF just because it's being abused right now and people are making all kinds of babies and then they're discarding them. And that's not right. If you are convincing women to create all kinds of embryos and then at the end of the day, you're just going to kill, you know, those embryos, that's not right. And that's really going to take a toll on a woman. Anyway, so I went down this rabbit hole, but I think that's what she means when she says he's destroying your daughters, because his position on abortion, maybe Donald Trump doesn't even have all that strong of a position on abortion. And in fact, I'd say that he's kind of moderate when it comes to abortion. So you really can't make up this level of delusion. She says that you'll let your daughters be destroyed so that way you don't piss off President Donald Trump. I mean, if Trump is reportedly destroying families, why aren't families being destroyed? You know, she goes as far as to say that Trump supporters, blaming Trump supporters for a natural disaster like a flood. Like, you supported him despite him drowning you. And I don't even understand how she gets there. Does this woman even brush her teeth in the morning? Like, is she capable of doing that? Just this level of stupidity is astonishing to me. And does she realize that none of this really helps the left? Like, coming out and calling half of the country cult members and saying that they'd be willing to drown themselves before denying their support of President Donald Trump, that doesn't do anything for the left. Nobody really believes that Trump supporters are like that. People work with Trump supporters. They live with Trump supporters. Their family are Trump supporters. People don't really believe that crap, that Trump supporters are cult members. And I don't know. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 13 says this: evil people and imposters will go from bad to worse, deceiving the deceived, deceiving and being deceived. Friends, that verse is pretty much Joy Reid's name is stamped on it. Like, she recently claimed that half the country, you and I, that we're cult members and that we belong to a cult and that we would drown our daughters to keep Trump happy. Like, that's so outlandish. And that's not journalism. I don't know what that is. It's evil people and imposters will go from bad to worse. She said some pretty crazy things on MSNBC, but since MSNBC, I think she's gone from bad to worse. And she's deceiving, and she's been deceived. And this is somebody who's really lost touch with reality and truth, quite frankly. So Proverbs 29 verse 9 says this: if a wise man has an argument with a fool, the fool only rages and laughs, and there's no quiet. So you see, Joy Reid, she doesn't want to have a debate. She demonizes. She doesn't persuade. She projects. She's not interested in unity and truth. She's interested in attention. That's why she says such outlandish things like Trump supporters are cult members who would be willing to drown their daughters to keep Trump happy. Like, that's why she says such outlandish things. It's really just to get attention. And that's why she lost her show. It's because you say such outlandish things, people will never believe you, and there is no truth in what you say at all. And when you say these things, you're never going to be watched. People aren't going to take you seriously at all. So this is the age we live in. Isaiah 59:14 says, truth has stumbled in the streets. Honesty cannot enter. The media has become a temple of lies, where people like Joy Reid pretend that their prophets is spewing out, absurdities about floods and fascism and how, there's cult members and that this is an invisible cult and that they're willing to drown their daughters to appease Donald Trump. Like, what planet is she on? Scripture reminds us 12:19, truthful lips endure forever, but lying tongues last only a moment. And I say, let her mock Trump supporters all they want, call them cult members. I mean, this is bizarre. Like, if Donald Trump is my president, I wouldn't drown my children to keep him happy. Weird. The truth is the truth, and let's stay rooted in it. And, as long as Joy Reid is out there mocking, let the godless rage on, I guess, because after the cameras are off and the noise dies down, really all that's left is the truth. And the truth is that Trump supporters aren't cult members who would drown their daughters in order to keep Trump happy. All right, smash that like button. We're going to be right back. Subscribe to the channel. Hey, good morning. I appreciate you being here. Go ahead and smash that like button, share this out. Joy Reid, she needs a mental institution. She's insane. I think that she's just, and the Bible tells us, that the evil doers, the imposters, that they will go from bad to worse. She's just convinced herself at this point that Trump supporters, I think that she truly has convinced herself that Trump supporters are cult members and that they're out to get her and that they would be willing to sacrifice their children. Like, how disgusting have you got to be to say that they're drowning their children just to keep Trump happy? Like, this was a tragedy. It was a natural disaster. There were tons of little girls who died that Camp Mystic. There have been whispers about it being possibly a terrorist attack. But even then, Donald Trump wouldn't have been able to stop that, right? That sometimes tragic things like terrorist attacks happen. But really, I think for all evidence purposes, it looks like a natural disaster. I don't think it's President Donald Trump's fault. It's just floods happen. And it's truly tragic when you have somebody who is going out there and saying these things when people are grieving. Okay, people are grieving, and say you had a daughter who died in the flood at Camp Mystic, and you voted for President Donald Trump. Could you imagine how that would make somebody feel? Hearing Joy Reid saying, "Oh well, it's your fault. It's Donald Trump's fault that the floods happened, and you kept him in office, and you did this." And I mean, is she essentially saying that these little girls deserved it because they kept Trump in office, and that's why they drowned? I mean, I don't know what the hell she's saying. Trump derangement syndrome is real. Exactly. Joy should name her podcast The Crash Out. It's all she ever does. Yeah, she is just crashing out, I think, after losing her MSNBC show, and just says the most outlandish things. And probably it's for clicks and virality or whatever. But at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. And we work with Trump supporters. You work, even if you're a leftist and you're listening, you work with a Trump supporter. Likely you have a family member who voted for President Donald Trump in the 2020 election. I mean, statistically, over half of the country voted for President Donald Trump in the 2024 election. So statistically speaking, it's very likely that you know a Trump supporter and you know that they're not in a cult. Okay? A lot of people are being critical of President Donald Trump and the things that he's done on the right. So you've got conservatives, Trump supporters, even Tucker Carlson has come out and been critical. I thought the Iran nuclear sites being blown up by the B-2 bombers, I think that was a genius move. But you have people who are Trump supporters who don't agree with that. You have people who are Trump supporters who don't agree with the back and forth of the Epstein files. So there is plenty room in the Republican Party for dissent of President Donald Trump, and a lot of his supporters have been critical of his administration so far for various things. I remember Republicans, I just talked about it, some Republicans came out strongly against, I think it was money or tax credits for IVF. I can't remember exactly what President Donald Trump did with the IVF. But he was pro-IVF. A lot of the pro-lifers who are, Trump supporters endorsed President Donald Trump for 2024, voted for President Donald Trump in 2024. They came out and spoke against him as far as the IVF thing goes. So there have been plenty of people who have pushed back, Trump supporters who have pushed back against some of Donald Trump's policies and what he's done so far in office. So that would suggest to me that these people are not just blindly following Donald Trump or like their cult members, and they will do anything to make him happy. Donald Trump would love nothing more than Trump supporters to stop talking about the Epstein files. But guess what? People aren't stopping. They're not stopping. They're not going to stop talking about the Epstein files. He would love nothing more. He, called us names, his own supporters, for wanting to see the release of these Epstein files. I think he'd love nothing more for it to go away because of the global economic collapse. Like I said, they won't come out and say that because then we could pretty much guess who's on the list by then. If they came out and said, "Oh, we can't release it due to," and you're going to ruffle some feathers. They're going to say, "Okay, you're protecting child predators just to preserve the economy, the global economy." And I mean, if you knew what a global economic collapse would look like, I think you'd have a tough decision before you. Global economic collapse, you're talking like Great Depression. Our currency wouldn't matter much at all. People would die. And that's the decision before President Donald Trump. If I was in his shoes, I would choose to release the name of the pedos because that's the right thing to do. And we're just going to have to deal with the consequences of that. Okay. Let's see. I'll be the first to criticize the administration's actions on a few issues. All that should be said about the Texas flood are that the prayers are for the victims and the families. Yes. Continuing for support for Ukraine would be one of those things that, yes, I'm glad somebody's talked about that. And I'm really nervous about the Israel, Israel, they just a huge bomb Syria. So this is still not working out. And I think Donald Trump is doing the best he can. It's a very volatile situation over in the Middle East, and we can thank Joe Biden for that. Let's not forget that Joe Biden is to blame for all of this. Ukraine being one of them. Continuing support for Ukraine. Yes, they are sending more aid to Ukraine, defense systems for Ukraine. And that's really annoying because they aren't the 51st state, and they've already gotten like $200 billion something dollars of taxpayer dollars. That's some estimates. It's insanity. It's like, why? We've paid for the pensions of their firefighters, their teachers over in this country. We've paid their salaries. Okay, that's what the U.S. taxpayers have been doing in Ukraine. Now we're at a point, and I like the mineral deal because we can justify at this point, because there was a mineral deal that was done, and I thought it was a great deal, where we now have an investment in Ukraine. So we're protecting an asset of ours. We've got those minerals, and there's a deal there with Ukraine. So that's why he's sending defense system or more dollars over to Ukraine, because we have an alliance now with Ukraine. So it's justified, but we've already given them $200 billion. So I agree with you. Continuing support for Ukraine, not a good look on the Trump administration. And I really hope he gets a handle on this issue with the Middle East. I think that we are still in that ceasefire agreement, which is why I'm so confused as to why Israel bombed Syria, because there was like a 60-day ceasefire agreement that Donald Trump negotiated, because he's the only adult in the room when it comes to Israel and Iran. But at the end of the day, like, calling us cult members, not justified. Most Trump supporters are critical of President Donald Trump and some of his actions. And we don't just blindly support President Donald Trump. He has faced a lot of heat from his own party, especially recently, considering the Epstein files, Ukraine, continuing support for Ukraine. That was another one. All right. TDS is real. Trump derangement from Israel. All right. Let's get to one more story I've got. This is Ken Langen. He's the founder of Home Depot. So he's been among the many business leaders who have attacked President Donald Trump over tariffs. Now, that's one thing that President Donald Trump has done right, is the tariffs. There's things that Donald Trump has done wrong, but he's done a lot of things right. Negotiating the ceasefire with the Middle East, the Iran nuclear sites being bombed by our B-2 bombers. I thought that was genius. He's done a lot of good things. So this Ken Langen, the Home Depot guy, the founder of Home Depot, he had endorsed Nikki Haley for president. Could you imagine Nikki Haley and what we would be doing in Ukraine right now if Nikki Haley was president? But it took him 6 months into Trump's presidency to start to see results. And now this Langen, Ken Langen, the Home Depot founder, he's pretty much saying, oops, my bad. I actually like President Donald Trump. So he's singing in a totally different tune being 6 months into this administration. And he's admitting he made a mistake and that he is now sold on President Donald Trump. And he goes, quote, I think he's got a good shot at going down in history as one of the best presidents ever. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Let me tell you right now, I am sold on Trump. In fact, I'll say this. I think he's got a good shot at going down in history as one of our best presidents ever.
That is a real turnaround because you didn't want to vote for him.
I tell you the reason. I want to tell you, I'm a believer. What I'm seeing happening is absolutely nothing short of a great thing. And there's a beat. People are walking with more bounce in there. It's all around.
I gave you quite a bit of grief.
Huh?
I gave you grief.
You give me grief?
I gave you grief when it was a binary choice. You're still complaining about Trump and it was a binary choice. It's like, are you kidding me?
Knowledge implies one thing. When you made a mistake, admit it.
Okay.
I think this guy is turning out to be a president.
Right.
One of the pilots on that miraculous trip to Iran that we wiped out, whatever the hell we wiped out.
Right.
He said, you're the only guy that in the presidency that would have done what you did. One of the pilots said that.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's probably right.
Okay. So he pretty much said, oops, I was wrong. So he goes, knowledge implies one thing. When you've made a mistake, admit it. Right. So he admits here that he made a mistake. And as I've said, there is media coverage. The media coverage here of President Donald Trump is just so awful. And they just set these narratives about these tariffs and how it's just going to destroy the economy, yada, yada, yada. It didn't turn out to do that. In fact, we're getting all kinds of revenue from that. And like I said, what President Donald Trump is trying to do is he's trying to offset the taxpayer burden with the tariff. So rather than getting all of our revenue from the taxpayer, which is like 90-10 or 99.1% probably under the Biden administration, there were no tariffs essentially. It used to be different where we would do 70-30. 70% comes from the taxpayer, 30% comes from the tariffs as far as revenue goes. But it's also a tactic to try to get companies to come here and to build here and to manufacture here. So the tariffs turned out to be a really great thing. And the actual results of President Donald Trump's agenda is smashing through the media narratives that they've said that the tariffs were going to be terrible. So, for example, CNN, they had a poll out there saying that 6 out of 10 adults oppose Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill. Nothing from the big, beautiful bill had gone into effect yet, obviously. So how can you oppose something that you don't really even know happens from the bill? But they said 6 out of 10 people opposed the BBB. The perception, of course, was based on a lie, though. So the media, what they would do is they'd call up CNN. They probably would call up and say things like, do you support the bill that cuts food stamps for 11 million Americans or something like that? Well, that's a leading question, and you're not providing context that now there's going to be work requirements, and the people who are abusing the system are no longer be collecting food stamps. So I know it's baloney. You know it's baloney. They know it's baloney. CNN knows it's baloney. But the message that Democrats want to get pushed out there will get pushed out there. And then they're going to do all of these phony polls and ask these leading questions. And really, a lot of people liked the BBB. There were separate polls that asked more down the middle questions about the bill and just the substance of the bill. And a lot of people liked what was actually in it. So you answer the phone and they give you a question. They present a question in a very unfair way. Of course, you're going to say that you're against the BBB. And that's what CNN did. They were looking for an answer and they got the answer that they were looking for with that poll. So Ken, the Home Depot founder there, the billionaire, he fell into the same trap, the media narratives that Donald Trump was going to destroy the planet and that he wasn't going to be a good president. It turns out he's admitting he's wrong now, and he's not going to be the only person who admits he's wrong. President Donald Trump has done a lot of great things. Tariffs are a powerful tool for the U.S. To create the U.S. as a powerhouse of importing goods, especially for the U.S. as a powerhouse of importing goods. Yeah, so we need to start making our own, right? That is what the tariffs are for. Donald Trump has done a very good job with tariffs and the BBB. We're focusing on the blue-collar worker, the hardworking Americans, the average worker. With the BBB, that's the sentiment of the bill. So I don't think that Donald Trump has done a superb job. I wouldn't say a perfect job. Like I said, the Epstein files, like I said, sending money to Ukraine. That can be justified, the Ukraine one, a little bit, because they are now an ally of ours because we have that mineral deal in place. Appreciate you providing context. I haven't looked into this and the details of the ceasefire agreement. I saw that Israel had bombed Syria. We know this. Now, Israel bombed the newly formed Islamic government of Syria as its forces were attacking ethnic minorities along the Israeli border. So quite possibly Israel, was just acting out in defense, and they might have broken the ceasefire agreement, but this might not even be, I don't know a whole lot about it, might not even be a part of the ceasefire agreement, like the newly formed government of Syria might not be within it. So I don't know the details of the ceasefire agreement, but we'll tackle it all tomorrow as I learn more. I don't like to speak on those kinds of things until some more news comes out. And tomorrow we will be hitting, I know, Jay, you want to get to this 1099 thing, 1099 workers being mistreated by Democrats and Republicans. Republicans are jumping on board with these independent contractors and trying to do away with 1099 independent contractors. And that's just an attack on entrepreneurship. We should not allow these 1099 workers to unionize. It's kind of defeats the purpose of 1099 workers, right? The whole purpose for being a 1099 is that you aren't a part of a club or a part of a union, and you kind of work for yourself and you're your own boss. And they don't like that, Democrats or people who are anti-freedom. So we're going to get to that tomorrow. Be sure to hit that like button and smash the subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Bye-bye. Love you.